we are back with our little round table of very intelligent, fitness-minded folks. And we're talking about the core for health, function, and or aesthetics. So everybody's gonna give their take. We're gonna start with Coach Hunter here.
Well, first off, I think what you see on social media or your favorite social media influencer, what they do or what they show that they do is probably a lie. Because I feel like every time when somebody is doing like one of these quick 5-second videos or whatever, they're like, here's the ab exercises that I do, and they're like doing these ab crunches and you're like,
Very glad I have that on video.
So often, yeah, but just look, because so often you'll see like, oh, here's my ab routine, and it's just like quick, explosive, like body weight movements.
Yeah.
Why would the abs be different than any other muscle group? Where like, are you just gonna do leg extensions with body weight? Like, probably not. So what I would say with abs is do like a cable ab crunch and use the same principles where it's progressive overload. So I like a cable ab crunch. You just kind of go like this, and because you can have your whole cable weight stack and you can work from say, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 pounds and work all the way down up to like 200, 300 pounds. That's how you actually like build the midsection.
But a lot of people do those cable crunches wrong, and they just push their hips back without contracting their
Well, yeah, I mean,
oh sure.
Yeah.
you have to like learn how to use your core, which is kind of a separate thing, but that's a longer discussion, and maybe that's something that Grace can talk about a little bit. She's really good at getting people to engage their cores. So.
Is that where we're going next?
That's
you
it.
ready,
But,
Grace? Oh, you got more to say?
So use progressive overload. Don't just do body weight exercises and slow it down a little bit. Slow and control. So
Absolutely.
that would be my big thing. For sure.
I like that. Very well put, good sir. Are you good to go, Grace? You wanna go
Sure,
next?
sure.
Let's talk about it.
We're just talking core, right? Was there a specific question?
No, just basically what your take is for yourself, for clients, for the masses. Just how you feel about core training, and you can, again, for health, for function, and or for aesthetics, if you just want to focus on that. But I doubt it, because you're a very functional core person.
God, I'm insane. I'm gonna talk too much. I don't even know where to begin. You should train your core, number one. I agree with what Hunter said. Don't follow whatever that Instagram YouTuber is doing, because they're not you. But two things that I like to drive home when it comes to core training. One is form follows function. So whatever you're doing with your core as you're training, like that's how it's gonna develop. And you'll see a lot of people doing, so I'll just show like 2 crunches, for example, where, okay, here's one way to do a crunch. Here's another way to do a crunch.
Sure, yeah.
Can you see?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So be aware of how you're regulating the pressure, the intra-abdominal pressure in your torso, because if you are always bearing out as you're doing core work, you probably don't have like a big developed rectus abdominis that's actually needing to protrude that much. It's probably because you have poor pressure within your core or pressure control within your core, and you're not activating the muscles properly. So there's also a lot more going on in your core. So like when you do bicep curl, and yeah, you're gonna see that bicep protrude and flex a little bit and get a little bit bigger on that concentric motion. But when you do your core, you'll see a little bit of that. But if you're doing your core work and you're seeing a lot of outward movement, chances are that you're not using the muscles properly. So let's touch on aesthetics. So aesthetics,
Grace has a 6-pack, a visible 6-pack, everybody.
no, I don't.
Oh,
Because, you know
posh.
why? Because abs are made in the kitchen. That's such a cliche term. But you need to train them, but also like if you're training your abs all the time and you're eating like crap, then you're never gonna get a 6-pack. So eat well, okay? Don't think they're gonna get 6-pack abs from doing a bunch of crunches and sit-ups. And then, I do think that they're very, very, very important to train for overall health, well-being, to make sure that you're giving them some sort of attention. I'd say most like ab programs out there, and to Hunter's point of the stuff that you're gonna find on like YouTube and Instagram, most of them I think are way more volume than anyone needs on their abs. So you don't need to go do like 10 ab exercises in a row for 3 sets each. At least that's my viewpoint. I don't know if everyone else views that. I feel like that's way overkill. We wouldn't do that for like any other muscle group, so I don't know why we would do it for the abs, but that's sometimes preached out there in those like gimmicky things. But absolutely do them because they're gonna support all your other lifts, and it's like, it protects, well, it's your main muscles of respiration, and breathing is kind of important if you weren't aware. And then also it protects all your vital organs. So make sure that this like foundational area that connects all of your limbs is strong. Otherwise, the rest of your lives are gonna be way harder.
That's right. And for those who don't know, Grace and I did a couple of core videos several months ago that you should check out. But anyway, is that all you're gonna say today? Yes. All right. Moving on to Coach Nick.
I don't know how to follow that up. That covers
Just
it all.
it's whatever you do, man.
Yeah, I would just say that like for me, a lot of times core training, like I like to do isolated core training too, generally at the end of my workout. But just making sure to engage the core, and I tell my clients this all the time, throughout every movement that you're doing, and especially the big compound movements where you need that stability piece and you need protection when you're heavily loading weights, especially vertically through the spine. You really want to protect yourself by engaging your core and engaging it correctly. I guess I wrote about this yesterday in the weekly set, but learning how to brace your core properly and what that looks like is extremely important. And if you can't brace your core properly, you're going to put yourself in vulnerable positions when you're heavy loading. So really core training, although I mean it is great in isolation too, you should really be incorporating it throughout your entire workout. Continue engaging your core to keep yourself, I mean, like I said, compound movements, absolutely. And even with isolation movements, you want the rest of your body to be under control when you're isolating a specific muscle group. And the centerpiece of that is your core. It's your foundation. So that's kind of my big point. And then I would say too, you know, when you do these movements and you practice them in the gym, you always want them to, for the most part, translate to movements that you're going to be doing throughout everyday life. So if you can get into a good practice of engaging your core properly with a heavy load, you know, when you're at home and you bend down to pick up a heavy box of books or something, you're going to have that muscle memory to engage your core and protect yourself. When you're in those moments when you're not necessarily strength training, you're just living your life. So that's good. I would say, yeah, since beginning here at Success, I've kind of stepped away from doing a lot of floor core routines, thanks to Tom, the man behind the camera. I've been doing a lot more, again, like full range of motion type core movements, playing around with the ab wheel or some variations of that.
That's right, boy. Yeah.
Or any sort of hanging core exercises. I really just feel everything engaging, every piece of my core. So that's what I've been leaning a little bit more towards. And there's nothing wrong with floor core routines as well. Every once in a while I'll throw that in just to kind of give my body something different, shock my system in a different way. But yeah.
That's well put. Good stuff. Thank you, Nick. Brooks, are you ready to talk about core?
I am ready.
Good stuff.
I like a lot of rotational work in my core, especially kind of focusing on golf and more athletic development, but rotational core, especially even with Gen Pop, getting people to move, because you never know when they're picking up a heavy object and going across their body with it, and that's where you can get a lot of strains and issues. So I love doing pal-off presses, rotational work, chops. I think a very underutilized one is farmer carries with a lot of people as well.
Sure,
Farmer
yeah.
carries are great for that static hold, and it's just a great transverse over for just real life carrying heavy objects. If your core can't support it, like everyone else said, something's going to break down and you're probably going to get hurt somewhere along the line. We only said as strong as our core and our grip strength most of the time. But those are kind of my favorite things. I had a buddy I played baseball with, he was a catcher as well, and he said his core is like a asylum. It was 6 inches of padding, but there was a brick wall behind it.
Hey.
And it was always a funny joke because he was a former catcher with me, but he didn't do a whole lot of core training. He just liked his 6 inches of padding. But yeah, rotational work, I think everyone should be doing it. Whether
Yes.
that's Russian twists on the ground, cable stacks, chopping from low to high, high to low, just kind of working that whole crossbody transverse abs. So
Absolutely.
that's about all I have for the core training. I'm not huge doing it at every session, but again, there's a time and place for it. If I don't do it in the beginning of the session, sometimes I just skip it at the end of the session, so it's easy to do it right away or in the middle, because if I save it to the end, I'm just like,
I did enough core throughout the workout. Especially when you're doing big compound lifts like a squat, you are using your core, or if you're doing like a standing shoulder press, you are using your core. People tend to forget that your core is actively engaged.
Right.
Or it should be engaged when you are doing those movements.
Should
If
be,
it's
yes.
not, you're doing a little bit something wrong in the form, but you should be bracing like Nick just was talking about, Big Red was talking about bracing properly throughout a lift. So a lot of those big compound movements, you are bracing your core throughout the movement. So that's all I got.
It guides pretty much everything, right? It's at our center. Alex, my man.
That's probably my biggest one is mind muscle connection and really feeling your core and tightening up and bracing throughout your big lifts. So especially like squatting and deadlifting in particular, that you want and you need almost to have that tight core and bracing. Otherwise, I mean, you have so many leaks in power just in deadlifting alone. If you don't have a tight core and you're bracing properly, I mean, you can do so much more if you just learn how to brace properly. Kind of like Brooke said too, I'm really into, especially for athletes, I mean anyone, but rotational work, because I feel like a lot of people only kind of lift on one plane. Not really many people go to different planes too. That's a big one that I incorporate with a lot of people. And I think the last one, kind of like Hunter said, is just progressive overload, where you see a lot of people who just do sets of like 20 to 25 for sit-ups or leg raises or something like that, where you could do so much more just doing a weighted sit-up or like Hunter said, like a cable weighted crunch or something like that too. Any of that stuff works. But I still think at the end of the day for me, my biggest one would be the mind muscle connecting during deadlifts or squats. Just making sure you brace. That's, I think, the biggest way to train clients before even doing core, because they're gonna work it every time they're doing those anyways. And if you do, 20 to 40 reps of squats, that's core work every single time they're doing it. So, but that's probably my big three that I have.
Very good, very good. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, everybody.
Winners.
Okay, I'll go. And I'm gonna lend a little different perspective on the high rep sort of core floor or floor core. Anyway, it's not to say that I necessarily am all in support of that being like the best approach, but almost playing devil's advocate, I guess what I've heard of the argument behind that being a good way to develop, like for example, your rectus abdominis, getting down and doing a lot of sit-ups, is those are kind of more endurance muscles that can develop differently than other muscles, kind of like calves. I've heard that same kind of argument. And if anybody's familiar with Christian Bale, American Psycho, in the movie, he says he got up to 1,000 sit-ups a day or whatever, and apparently that's actually what Christian Bale did to develop his six-pack. So
in the morning, if my face is a little puffy, I'll put on an ice pack while doing my stomach crunches. I can do 1,000 now.
anyway, just a little different perspective, but that's not really how I approach my core. But I do believe that everybody should be training their core in a variety of ways, and that includes isolating it. And I know that in the bodybuilding community specifically, there's a lot of pushback against direct core work, which I find ridiculous, because I think that it is very, very key for having an aesthetic midsection, and it's not necessarily going to bulk up your midsection in a way that you're not going to be as aesthetic. So yes, you are going to utilize your core with a lot of compound movements, but I don't think that's necessarily going to be enough, and doing more direct core work is going to support all those movements and just make you stronger in general. It's going to make you more functional, going to make you more athletic, going to make you more aesthetic. And the core is also not just like, people often will fixate on like the rectus abdominis or the obliques, but it's also, you could say your low back is part of your core. You could even say, sometimes people say the glutes and the hip flexors are part of your core. So there's a lot going on there, but the main message is I think that everybody should be training their core in some way, and yes, I do think it is ideal to make it progressible, but there's a lot of different ways to approach the direct core work. So my favorite exercises that I've touched on in previous videos are, I'm really big into ab wheel. I think that one's fantastic, and you can make that one, you can start very small with that one for people who are maybe not as competent with the movement, and then you can work up and then maybe over time get to a point where you're doing it from standing, which I think is kind of like the ultimate of core exercises. And then I'm big into leg raises as well, where it's really coming from kind of like the lower abs and hip flexors. And also, again, we've talked a lot about rotational movements. I think that that is very key, but especially for people who are into athletics. Not just for athletes, again, it's very functional for just like your average person as well, but if you're an athlete and not doing some kind of rotational core work, you are foolish, I say. But I think we've all said a good amount on core, and hopefully you got something out of it.
Yay.